2025 board nominations. You can be a dues paying to be a nominee and be to vote. You must be a dues paying member. You can pay through cash or check or through Cash App at FPSENA. And you must nominate yourself before the end of today's meeting. Nominations so far are for member at large, Haley Cook. Treasurer, Evan is rerunning for treasurer. We have for secretary, Roger Yee. Mark Mingapora for vice president, and I am rerunning as president. If you would like to run, again, must be a dues paying member, and just gotta let me know by the end of the night. Crime and safety updates. I will pass it over to Officer Walker, who is online, to share those.
Hey everyone, Officer Walker. Just coming in. Don't have a lot of updates to give you guys tonight. I did pass along the flyer for our upcoming trunk or treat that is happening this Sunday. So if anyone has any kiddos, please bring them out. We will have all of our toys, big trucks, cars, and aviation, all of that there, and we will have lots of candy. So if you have any kiddos, please bring them out. Other than that, if anybody has any questions for me or any issues you're having, you can inbox me or call me. I'll stick around for a second to see if anyone has anything for me.
Any questions? Figure that out.
Hi, Nicola, or Officer Walker. It's Ron Coleman. I could call you, but there's some citizens that had expressed some concern about a break-in next to the Housing Authority property on Norfolk and Newstead on Friday morning, I guess, or Friday around noon. Did you have anything further on that break-in? They crowbarred open the front door and took the television and some gift cards.
No, but send me that email and I will look and see if they had their report completed or if they have some information that I can share with you.
Thank you, Officer Walker. Sorry about the audio issues. It's always a toggle war, Any other questions for Officer Walker before we move on to some more updates? No? Awesome. Caitlin, do you have any ward updates to share?
Hello, everyone. I'm your legislative assistant.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm your legislative assistant, Caitlin. I've been here for about a year. Alderman Brown is typically at these meetings, but he went to the other meetings. There's 2 neighborhood association meetings at the exact same time. The only update I have for you is that we are putting, just so you know it's coming, nothing's changing with the permit parking, but we're going to be doing like a kind of a maintenance bill, putting everything under one bill, so that way it's not under 7 different bills. Nothing's changing on your end at all. The only thing is that it'll be in one bill and makes it easier for the administration to deal with everything.
What are they putting again in one bill?
Yeah, and just putting everything under one bill instead of
Everything.
all of the permit parking districts that are current. And then the election is on November 5th. Please vote. That's the next election. Go all the way to the end for all of the propositions, your local propositions. They're all the way at the end. It's taking about, they're saying right now, average of 20 minutes to vote, so plan that extra time. It's a very long ballot, but please continue voting all the way down because those propositions at the end are extremely, extremely important. As you all know, Alderman Brownie has been pushing for Prop T, which is the proposition to turn the streets department into a department of transportation. And then, does anyone have any concerns, questions, etc.?
I guess I do. This may have been for the officer.
So my name is Percy Green Third. I live at 4500 block of Wichita. I've been here about 33 years. One of the issues that I'm having with parking is my family, when we come home and we out, I remember it's 3 hours in the morning, but come home like at 9 or 10, we're getting the overflow from Urban Chestnut, people parking on our street, whereby we don't have anywhere to park. And so I'm wondering what can be done about that. We call parking enforcement. Sometimes they come, sometimes they don't. And so that's becoming a real issue with my family. Not able to park on Wichita, I have to park somewhere on Taylor or somewhere else. They have to walk to the house at night, and I'm not there. So that's bothering me. I'm trying to figure out what we can do to get the enforcement up, write tickets or tow or something, because they should be able to park on our street and not have the parking credentials, if you will.
Yeah, definitely call into parking enforcement. If you don't have the number, I have that and I can share it with you. It is definitely a problem that parking enforcement, they typically, their shift ends at 9 or 10 and they don't have an overnight shift, which is where your problem is. Technically, police can issue parking tickets as well. You can always call the non-emergency number, and if someone's available, they could come over and give a parking ticket. They're definitely probably, yeah.
So with that, because they are having events in the neighborhood, we can't just issue out parking tax to anybody because it is a public street, so people have the right to park on those city streets. Now, if they're doing something like parking in front of a fire hydrant or they park the wrong way on the street, now that's something we can handle along with parking enforcement. But when they're having events and you guys are having issues with parking, I don't know if that falls up under the new program where people are getting these permits to park on the street. I know you guys had a program going on. I think the residents was trying to get permitted parking or some type of sticker or plaque or something to show that they park on this street or they live on this street, so their car should be there. And if they're not a resident there, I guess they can't park there. I'm not really familiar with that program, but only thing that we say on our end, it's a city street and we can't, just ticket or tow anybody off the street unless unless they're creating some type of violation, like maybe blocking your driveway, intersection, again, parked in front of a fire hydrant, parked in the wrong direction, things like that. But if they're just parking on your street because they're attending an event, it's nothing that we can do with those cars.
Yeah, that block does have a parking permit district, so they technically, only if they have the permit system, which I know the treasurer's office is trying to work with you guys to share that information, but it is a long process. Any other questions?
Awesome. Thank you, Caitlin. Jumping into other neighborhood updates with Ron.
Hey, everyone. At the risk of repeating myself every month, I try to come up with some new things, but it's hard sometimes. But I know that vacant buildings continue to be a problem, and one of our very good nonprofits in the past, Rise Development, which used to be RHCDA, has a lot of properties in the neighborhood, but now a lot of those are vacant and they're not maintaining them. And I just want you to know that we really are, including the aldermen, are trying to reach out to their leadership and have not had any luck. I'm not sure what's going on, but if you continue to have issues with those properties, the Rise or the Connect properties, please let me know and we'll make sure that we can get them on our list if we're not aware. And we've had a few squatters go into those. One guy that's apparently the head squatter is telling other squatters they can't be there, that he actually mows the lawn and does everything. But so please keep me in the loop on all of that. Another issue with vacant buildings, if you're not reporting it and we're not aware of it, it's just a concern. We lost a family that lived next door to a vacant home and they put their house up on the market. So we don't want to lose people. We try to provide as services we can to help keep the block as nice as possible and as safe as possible. This time of year, we haven't had rain in a long time, so I normally don't ask you to water the trees, but please put a few gallons on your tree in the front yard, and especially if it's a younger tree, because I don't see any rain in sight, and we don't want to lose them. It is bulk pickup week this week, and we're on schedule, so get your items out. I think they'll come through Thursday, so if you have any big appliances or furniture, mattresses in your basement or want to get rid of them, please put them out tomorrow, and we'll hopefully get them Thursday. Okay, then I have some really good information and literature here on how to organize your block. It's just a matter of being in touch with your neighbors and communicating with them. It's so important to know your neighbors. You're not being nosy, but it's good to just know their patterns when they're going to work, when they're, it's so you know if something's suspicious, and you just need to maybe open a third eye towards it. But and then it also talks about how to have a block party, how to organize, maybe a social media group just for your block. A lot of good information, so I'll pass this booklet out. And then I have some guidelines on how you might be able to improve your own block as well. Communication, how to be a responsible pet owner. Just some make sure your address is on the back of your home as well as the front, so emergency and police and city services can be delivered effectively. And then, yeah, just some of the other good neighbor responsibilities that you have. So I will pass those out, but any questions? Yes, sir.
There's a few trees in front of my house on 4448 Shoto that have a red X on them, but they've been there for a year and a half. Is anybody going to take those down?
They are on the list, and they are trying to go prioritize the emergency trees, the ones that are causing a lot of damage. Yeah, no, I mean the ones that are dropping limbs on cars. Former Alderman Rhodey just had a giant tree limb fall on his car with a big red X on it, and it totally took out his car. So it's frustrating. Forestry has a third of the staff they're authorized to hire, but they're very far behind. But we did get a federal grant to hire contractors.
I'll volunteer. I got a saw. I'll cut it down.
Is it a little one or
Well,
big one?
it's not big enough for me not to cut down.
Okay, well, you can get a free permit.
Okay.
Yeah, they just need to come out and inspect
And then in relation to the sidewalks, I know that was addressed last meeting. The sidewalk right in front of Rainbow Park is the worst sidewalk in the neighborhood. Was that being addressed? It doesn't have any orange markings or anything like that?
It is.
I will see if it's on the list. I don't think it's on the list for this year, maybe. But I know that the sidewalk in front of the church should be on for this year, but the Rainbow Park to the north, I don't know if that is.
Did that lot ever sell to anyone? I know a gentleman bought the hospital, but did that?
I think the guy that owns the church now, that owns that lot as well. So I can check in with him. I probably am due to check in and see if he has any plans.
Yeah.
But hopefully with interest rates dropping, the development and rehab will start picking up again.
So question, sidewalk responsibility. I mean, sometimes the homeowners will help maintain the grass that they're trying to mow it over. When you start having situations where it's like a sinkhole in it, who's responsible is to fill it up? Maintain it?
If it's a sinkhole and it's in your tree lawn between the sidewalk and the street, then the citizen is responsible for filling that up.
Okay.
If you think there's a leak from the water line going to your house, then the city can look at that and they'll repair it if it's on the city property.
So who that contact to let them know so they can look and find out what's going on with that sidewalk? Because
Yeah.
I don't want someone at night to like twist an ankle trying to walk on the grass. So
Right, it's not in front of your home.
the sidewalk in front of my home, yes.
Okay, then I would just get a bag of dirt and throw it in there. Because we don't go around filling up holes. I hate to say it. But I mean, if there is water leaking and you see water, then please call the Citizen Service Bureau, or you can contact me and we'll send somebody out to inspect it.
Because what I'm not sure is like why it's happening. If there's an erosion going on underneath it for that to be occurring. So I can dump sand in it, but the underlying cause could be an erosion, could be water, get into it, maybe from the sidewalk or the streets, whatever the case may be, but I do not know. So I'm just asking, is that something that the city will investigate, or is that something I just have to dump sand inside? Because would the city investigate? I mean, you said if it's in front of the sidewalk has fallen.
Is there a fire hydrant nearby?
There's a fire hydrant, but it's not very close to it on that sidewalk. So, but I'm not sure if that's the cause of it. But I didn't know there was this some sort of a sinkhole or more like a gaping hole that was recently patched up on that side of the road.
Okay.
It was there for
Why
quite
don't
some
you,
time.
give me your address and I'll drive by and check it out.
Okay, all right.
Okay, anything else? Thank you all.
Awesome, thank you, Ron. We're gonna jump into some events and local news real quick, and then I'll turn it over to Cammie to talk about the work that's being done at Sherwood Park, and then we'll get to Scott and the St. Louis Transportation Mobility Plan. 2 Saturdays from now, it's our last litter pickup of the year. We've done this since March and have picked up bags and bags and bags and bags of trash across the neighborhood. Our last one is on Saturday, October 26th from 10 a.m. to 11:30. And as always, we meet at Newstead and Manchester, and we'll pick a different spot of the neighborhood to clean up. Everyone's free to join, provided the bags and the gloves. We just ask for your hands. Winter tree pruning. Winter is coming, and it's the perfect time to prune some trees with the neighborhood foresters, and they're certified specialty in pruning. They will help us prune some trees, the tree lawns across the neighborhood. We'll do this in November, December, and January. I believe this is
Not January.
not January, February. From 10 to 11:30, and we'll also meet at Oakland, Newstead, and figure out where to go from there.
So question for you.
Yep.
Was it last year or 2 years ago, the city took on initiative to plant trees on those sidewalks?
Mhm.
Some of them are not very healthy looking. Do you guys go and check and visit to make sure? I mean, I know the gentleman says to water them.
Yeah.
To provide the water, but if they're not looking healthy, like some blight is affecting them, do you guys look into it to make sure you treat them, or what do you guys do about those new trees if they're kind of sick?
It's usually up to the business of the resident in front of the tree to water it.
They water it if they're sick. They look sick. Yeah.
If they look sick, you can submit a CSV. And with that CSV, you can also submit a Citizen Service Bureau, either online. I recommend doing it online, so you can also submit a photo. I've done that with several. And if you're really, really concerned, you could email Alan Jankowski, who's the commissioner of the forestry department, with a photo, because that might push things along a little faster. Or you can email forestparksoutheast@gmail.com, and then I can tell someone who can talk to Alan Jankowski. They, like Ron said, they are severely understaffed and don't get paid a lot. You can also let us know, and in regards to tree pruning, we will just be doing clearance pruning. And if you know of streets that really need a lot of clearance pruning, especially if they have the root suckers down at the bottom, come to those events, let us know what streets we want to do. I have ideas myself, but you walk by your street every day, so we're looking for feedback on which streets you guys want us to work on. There's a lot of the city, I think, has 13,000 trees that they need to take down. And
Another event coming up is the electronics recycling event over at 1640 Kings Highway. If you have any unwanted electronics, Brightside and St. Louis City Recycles, I'll be working to take those from you. That's on October 19th from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. over at 1640 Kings Highway. A couple new businesses in the neighborhood. We have the Eric Outlaw Business Center over on 4256 Kings Highway. It is a 14-month business incubator helping minority entrepreneurs accelerate and scale small businesses. They have 3 current shops inside of it: JR Candle Co., Julie Rare Customs, customer, and DMI Blue Nails. They just opened. I'm gonna go check them out. They're open Tuesdays through Sunday.
Kings Highway or Manchester?
Manchester.
Okay.
See, I told you there'd be a ton of typos in here. I was drinking a glass of wine when I was doing this, so you know. Bound to be typos. It's the only way I can get through it. And then Sugar Fire is manning the kitchen for at least 6 months over at Urban Chestnut. You'll be able to get their greatest hits like pulled pork, brisket, and smash burgers. But Urban Chestnut's pizza and traditional German fare will still be there, so you won't miss that. They're running the kitchen right now. They started during Oktoberfest, which happened last weekend. And they'll be there for a little bit. I'm going to pass it over to Cami now to talk about all of the activity.
Good question.
Happening at Shadow
Beast
Park.
Building, there was a restaurant that was supposed to take over that facility, correct? What's the timeline on that?
What restaurant?
Beast.
Oh, Little Lucy and Lucy Quinn, or yeah, Little Lucy and I think it's Lucy Quinn. I think it's November is the expected
November?
opening. Mhm.
And Dan, while you're still on the topic, on bulk pickup days and every time the trash is dumped, they usually makes a mess next to every dumpster. And they don't get out of the trucks and pick that up. And the bulk people, they don't clean up really well. We've been floating the idea of having a crew go through the neighborhood and clean the alleys once or twice a week. We'd like to get support from the neighborhood and maybe get this rolling with the alderman. We discussed this with him before and he hasn't gotten back to us. So if we can get support and get that going, I think it'd be a great idea. The alleys look terrible when they dump the trash.
Okay, yeah, we can talk about that.
Okay.
Love a good cleanup. Cami?
So as you've probably noticed over the past couple of weeks, we have transformed the corner of Shoto Park thanks to lots and lots of volunteers who've come out. That was before. This is the first work day. We had great weather, nice cloud cover, nice and cool. Just keep going.
There's a lot of photos.
And a huge shout out to Haley and her dad for helping with all of the logs that created that really cool border. She really took the lead on that. And we had some volunteers that week who had just the right skills to help with that. And this past weekend, we had a bunch of volunteers who helped actually plant the plants. And they're looking pretty good. And again, it looks very small right now. This is just phase 1. And again, the Parks Department wanted a 5-foot buffer between the sidewalk and the plants. I'm hoping that as we can show that we can take care of these plants, they might let us put in some ground cover. And if you want to help with this, but weren't able to make it to any of the events, or if you want to just keep helping with it moving forward, we will need help watering the plants and also weeding. Can you go to one of the, this one? Okay, so the people online won't be able to see this, but where all of the mulch is, we put cardboard and paper down over grass and weeds, and they might come back up. Hopefully the cardboard and paper and mulch will suppress them enough, but weeds will still come back, so we need help weeding, and you can do that on your own. We will also have events where we meet together, but that's just something if you see a little bit of green in these mulch areas, just pluck it out because it's not supposed to be there. If it's not in the group of all the plants, there's 3 trees and the other plants, feel empowered to just pull that when you're walking through. It will really help us out, and hopefully next year we won't have any weeds or at least fewer weeds to start out. Yeah, it should be, it's gonna be something nice to look at. It's gonna be a great wildlife habitat for bees and insects and provide food for birds and bees and insects and whatnot. So very excited. Hopefully we can do other stuff in the park, and also hoping to look to plant more trees in the park next spring. Talking to Alan Jankowski about where we can do that in the park. So look forward to that. And if you want to help with watering, that's a little bit more complicated. So a huge thank you to Rachel, who lives across the street, who's letting us use her water. Also a huge thank you to Evan and Brittany, who helped us pick up the plants. We've just had a lot of help. So thank you to everyone who has helped out with this and made it possible. It could not have been done alone.
A big round of applause.
Yeah. Everyone. So if you want to help with watering, email forestparksoutheast@gmail.com, and Dan will let me know that you've reached that, and then I can contact you on how to do that. So thank you.
Thank you, Cami. Look at that. All right. Turn it over to Scott Ogilvie. We'll talk about the transportation and mobility plan. Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Dan. Hello, good evening, Forest Park Southeast. My name is Scott Ogilvie. I work for the city in the city's planning and urban design agency. And I am kind of the main city project manager for the city's transportation mobility plan, but I will emphasize that it is a cross-departmental effort. We are working with all the departments that sort of touch on transportation and mobility issues, as well as our partners like Great Rivers Greenway, Bi-State Transit, MoDOT, et cetera, et cetera. And Dan, thanks for the invitation to come talk to you guys tonight. Just hit that slide button. So I'm going to do a kind of a quick presentation, and happy to attempt to answer any questions afterwards. So first on this agenda is why transportation mobility plan? Can anybody tell me when the last time the city of St. Louis had a citywide transportation plan, covered the whole city? I hear some nevers. It's kind of accurate, but certainly we certainly haven't had anything that looks like a citywide transportation plan since like the 1960s, kind of in the end of the highway building era. So we're due. These are things cities have. We would like to have one too, and by next year we will. And so I'm going to sort of talk through some elements of the TMP. It's a pretty big project that has a lot of tentacles, I suppose. So it's sort of too much to go through all in one presentation, but I'll hit hopefully some high notes. Project team. So we have a consultant team that includes some local companies and partners that the city has worked with on many projects and have a lot of experience delivering plans and projects in the city of St. Louis. And it also includes some more national partners like Smith Group, who has done some bigger planning initiatives in other cities like Chicago and Detroit, but is also the lead designer on some of Great Rivers Greenway's Brookline Greenway projects. So we have experience with them locally too. And so that's our team mix. The lead team is a firm called CMT, Crawford, Murphy and Tilley, which is an engineering and planning firm located in downtown St. Louis, among other places. So why the TMP? As I said, we don't currently have a plan that covers the whole city. We certainly have lots of projects right now, and we are not standing still as regards to projects, but we don't have, when we go talk to people about transportation, including sometimes in this room, we are often talking to them about, this street, this corridor, even sometimes like this intersection. We are not kind of taking a step back and saying, what are the values residents have, the hopes, the desires residents have for the future of transportation in the city? What are the things the city should focus on? And sort of, what's the consensus around the things we collectively want to see? So that is what we're doing. So we are setting priorities, hopefully, for a safer, better maintained transportation network across the city, envisioning how residents want to get around. We are certainly incorporating existing large project initiatives such as the Brickline Greenway, such as potential Metrolink expansion on the Green Line on Jefferson Avenue. And we are hopefully embedding priorities and values into the projects we do, because right now it's a little hard sometimes to explain why we did project A and not project B. We hope to have a clearer way to communicate with residents why this thing was the top priority this year rather than this other thing. Safety, maintenance, equitable investment. So we're asking people these questions. What are people's values? I can tell you, we've surveyed lots of people across the city already since this project started. Can anybody guess what people's top priority is that we've heard so far? Feel free to just shout it out. Safety. It is safety. Which is not a surprise, but it is, I think, very valuable to hear from residents that it's not just our perception that people care about safety. We can really document that that is, in fact, a top priority for city residents. But there's lots of other potential values, and some of these things have trade-offs. So a trade-off might be investing in maintaining the things we have today versus investing in new projects. So we're trying to ask people about those trade-offs as well through this planning process.
Quick question for you.
Yes.
Determining factor when you're making this, trying to gather the citizens' opinion about what you should prioritize or focus on. Is it based on budget, or is it just you guys just trying to figure out? We have the form. We're just trying to figure out which one to prioritize. How do you address that?
How do we prioritize things today?
Yes.
Is that?
Yes.
We can't answer that question. That's why we're doing a citywide plan. I can't answer that question. I can't point to a document that says like, here is the prioritization process for projects. There are a lot of funding is divided up by ward. So alder people determine some of those priorities locally. That's sort of for small to medium-sized projects. Our partner agencies like Greenway, they do their own planning efforts for significant projects, and so like they have their priorities. We have a sense of some of the things I'm going to talk about. So like when we have made recent investments or investments that are funded but the projects aren't built yet, we're certainly thinking about safety, and like in the ARPA funding that the cities had, which you guys have probably heard about the last couple of years. Improving arterial roadways was a big priority, improving the safety on those roadways, accessibility. So there's a mix of things I think you would expect, but it is not always very easy to compare two things, like they might both have, attractive project features, but saying this project should really be the priority versus this project over here is something we can't do particularly well right now. You agree with that, Caitlin? And part of this is it's talking to the public, but it's also talking to departments in the city, right? So we have the streets department, the Board of Public Service, which is our public works department. We've got an office of the disabled. We have a parks department. We work with Great Rivers Greenway. We work with Bi-State, and in fact, we fund Bi-State partially. So there are many internal stakeholders as well. So we want to know what people kind of inside the system feel like or care about also. They have similar but not always identical priorities to residents. And it's a moment to kind of like hit pause and say, take a step back and say, people who have a lot of experience delivering projects, what's working, What do you wish was working better? What are things you'd like to do that you can't do? What are things you can do that you'd like to do more of? How do we get to those places? So we are also just doing kind of an internal assessment of policies, practices, ordinances that the city has. Some of them are good, some of them conflict with each other, some of them are ambiguous or unclear. Some of them we've already made some improvements to. And so the goal is through the planning process itself, not to have a document a year from now that says do A, B, and C. We're actually trying to do and enact some of these things in the course of the planning process itself, which I like because I like making things happen. So that's internal engagement, stakeholders. We've got, and your fearless leader, Dan, is on the Citizen Advisory Committee, so your neighborhood is well represented in this process for sure. Talked about engagement, assets and benchmarking. We have already done some improvements in how we talk about the projects we're doing and publicize the projects we're doing and kind of display them to the public in a way that, you know, more people have access to them and you don't have to, you know, show up to a neighborhood meeting to know what's happening. But there's still a lot that can be done to improve those things. There's lots of good models out there for how cities can kind of systematize how they talk about projects and how they update those things so people know what's coming. Because there's often a lot of lead time in transportation projects from the idea, even from funding the project to when it is actually built. There are cases where we fund a project and people have forgotten about it by the time we go to build it 4 years later. And so we want to have a better interface for residents to have kind of more timely access to that information. Talked about the policy and ordinance review. I'm going to go a little more in depth on two of these things, the safety action plan and the street design guide. Timeline. Well, so we're about 6 months in. I think one thing else, so we are wrapping up right now kind of the first phase of public engagement of taking information in. Then we can kind of get into plan development itself over the winter. Then we can bring a version of a draft plan back to the public and get input on it. And then the goal is sometime next summer for the city to actually adopt this plan as the official plan. It becomes part of the city's comprehensive plan, which is a legal document. And also for agencies like the Board of Public Service, possibly to adopt some of it themselves. So it's not just something that lives in planning and people forget about, but it's something that's kind of integrated into department planning and activities. So the thing, let me see, did we mention the survey yet? Let's try the next slide. Okay, engagement. So one thing I'll say, the survey was supposed to close this morning, but because I'm here tonight, we kept it open until tomorrow. So if you haven't filled out the survey yet, you have tonight to do it. It's at tmp-stl.com. We've had about 1,500 residents of the city complete the survey so far, but we could have 1,524 or something if you guys, Dan's probably already done it. If you guys go finish it. So please check it out tonight. It closes tomorrow. We've been out the last 6 months. We've done open houses. We've been at more than 30 events like this, neighborhood, other, you know, events that we have a presence at, other groups that we give presentations to let people know we're doing this, promote the idea, get input, and incorporate it into the planning process.
So what does the survey entail, if you don't mind? Can you speak a little bit about what's inside the survey?
Yeah, so the survey asks some general questions about what resident priorities and values are for transportation in the city, some information about the survey taker, some, you know, set priorities amongst the list of things, tell us about things you think are working or not working, tell us about things you wish we had, and, you know, rank some of your values and priorities. And so, so there's some kind of multiple choice questions, and there's also some open-ended questions just to, you know, express details about your experience getting around the city. There it is. Great, good, and that was impressive.
So did you guys also get feedback from the community as to what they consider to be safety, their concern for safety and what solutions they are proposing in this survey? Or is it just what are your priorities? Sort of, and is it safety and that was it? I'm just wondering what the retrospectives were when you guys looked at it and decided maybe we should focus on safety. Curious though.
Well, that's so we overwhelmingly hear that just informally, but that's also, I mean, we've been looking at the survey results as they come in, even though it's not complete yet. And people rank safety very high as something they want to prioritize, now and in the future. It's not the only thing for sure.
I'm just wondering, like, if it was like a fixed field that says safety and they checked it off, did they provide details of what aspect of safety they wanted? Is it like road safety? Is it like a lighting safety because they don't feel safe at night? Is it like neighborhood parties going on till 12 o'clock and you're worried about people that don't live in the neighborhood? What aspect of it?
If it's transportation related, you can provide that additional detail. The other thing is at the open houses, when you have time and space, you can walk through attendees through different design elements that might contribute to safer streets. And we've done visual sort of preference surveys of what people like, what they've experienced, what they've had questions about. So I think it's very helpful at kind of the global level to know in a statistically valid manner that residents really do prioritize safety. And then how you achieve that is going to be different based on the context of the street or the sidewalk. But we have part of the planning process that addresses some of that more specifically. Here's just a little snippet of, results are not quite complete, but survey responses so far. We asked people, would you be willing, if it took you a little bit more time to get around, but everybody was safer, is that a trade-off you're willing to make? Because that is a real trade-off that exists in real life. If we slow you down a little bit, things tend to get significantly safer. Are people okay with that trade-off? Most people are that have responded to the survey. We asked another question, if we slowed you down a little bit while you're driving, but it gave people more transportation options, more choice, is that a trade-off people agree with? Again, most survey takers do. And I'll emphasize we've done 2 surveys. So we did the same questions, but we've done a statistically valid sample of St. Louis residents, because when you do public engagement, the people who are most interested in the topic are the ones who tend to respond. And that's good information and we want it, but it is not necessarily statistically valid, and it's not necessarily reflective of the whole population of a city. So we want to make sure we've got geographic distribution, age distribution based on typical mode of transportation, racial, income. We want to have valid numbers that represent St. Louis. And so part of the survey was that kind of scientific method, statistically valid survey. Now, I'm going to go into a couple a little bit deeper dive on a couple specific topics that we're working on. So one is high injury network and a safety action plan. I get very excited about this. So East-West Gateway, our region's metropolitan planning organization that represents the counties, they've actually just this year, a couple months ago, completed a very deep data dive on which corridors have bad safety outcomes. And so we now have dramatically better information at our fingertips than we did a year ago to say which corridors are not performing well, and relative to each other, how good or bad are they? So we now have an adopted high injury network, and maybe we'll skip to the next slide. So this is a super important stat. If you look at all the mileage of roadways in the city of St. Louis, 3% of that mileage accounts for 30% of serious and fatal crashes. So if you want to make a dent in those fatality numbers and those serious injury numbers, you don't spend the money equally across every roadway. You focus on the locations that have the highest crash rates and are causing the worst safety outcomes. And now we know exactly which roadways those are. That's new information. We are already using it, and I think it will pay dividends down the road. But it's powerful data compared to, I think, the way we've had to approach this in the past. And so, these are just some maps of the high injury network for automobiles, for pedestrians, for the bicycle network. We've got this new data, we've got it at our fingertips. We're already programming projects based on this data. And so we are not kind of standing still and waiting for the whole plan to be finished. We're already using the data we have, but we're in this plan, in the city's transportation mobility plan. We can go a little bit deeper on how to address, like which design approaches to use to address these unsafe streets and roadways versus this regional plan, which is a little bit more focused on just locations that are problems. There's a big disparity in where serious crashes are based on race and income in the city. Probably not surprising to people, but we can now really document exactly how big that disparity is. And so when we have to make, there's trade-off, we don't have unlimited funding, of course, right? So when the city has to make a decision on, do we do this project over here or do we do it over there? We can really have a lot of data to support. We picked that project because that project was the worst road on the high injury network. And it was the most residents were getting killed and injured on that road. So this is an example of how we're already using the info. I'll just highlight the worst road in the whole St. Louis region is West Florissant near I-70 out to the city limits, kind of out to Goodfellow, so north of I-70. Next to Bellefontaine and Cavalry cemeteries. It stands out like a strobe light compared to most other roads. So we've already initiated some planning there with the goal of seeking federal funding to make safety improvements in the near future. But we've got other roads that we know we're also likely to be on the list. So Natural Bridge, MoDOT has already made some improvements to in recent years based on other safety data. Kings Highway, we've done a traffic study. That section of Kings Highway from Lindell up to roughly MLK is not good. So part of the ARPA funding, that segment got additional funding to make additional safety feature improvements that'll be constructed next year.
Sorry for interrupting you again. What safety features did you guys implement to address those
in that location on Kings Highway?
Yes.
So specifically we're talking, so back up a little bit. The city is repaving a bunch of north-south corridors and adding safety features next year with ARPA funding. Kings Highway is one of those corridors. And the segment from Lindell up to MLK got additional funding because we had already completed some preliminary designs. So the main thing is that right now that is, depending on if people are parked or not, it's a 6-lane roadway, 3 lanes in each direction, which is a lot of lanes. Leads to a lot of lane shifting, a lot of speeding. And some of the intersections, for instance, at Delmar and Kings Highway are extremely large intersections. They're much wider than they need to be. And that leads to bad driver behaviors like speeding through the intersections, driving around other vehicles. And it makes it unsafe for pedestrians because those are really long crossing distances. And that's also a location that's at 2 relatively busy bus routes, Kings Highway and Delmar, so you've got a lot of pedestrian activity there. So what we're doing there is we're adding a center median, and there'll be what we call a road diet. So instead of 5 to 6 lanes, depending on where you are, basically going to be 4 lanes. There'll be 2 through lanes, and there'll be some turning lanes at intersections, but there'll be a center median that divides Those opposing directions of traffic, which is a big safety feature, leads just to more predictable driver behavior, and also for people crossing the street. In a lot of places, that adds a pedestrian refuge halfway across the street. So you don't have to cross 5 or 6 lanes of traffic. You can cross 2 lanes at once. You can wait until it's clear and cross the next 2 lanes to get across the street. So that's a pretty typical, safety approach. And then Manchester. Manchester, you guys may know, is the MoDOT maintained, city-owned, but MoDOT maintained route. MoDOT will be back next year with the resurfacing project, and at the city's encouraging, a couple of years ago, they decided to spend a little more time planning for Manchester before they just went and resurfaced it and put back what was already there. So the design is not done, and it's a MoDOT project, so I can't say exactly what will happen, but it's highly likely that east of Vandeventer, there'll be an enhanced bike facility and a design that should slow drivers as well. There'll be some crossing improvements through the Grove segment. And then we're a little unclear as we get west of Kings Highway exactly what the design approach will be, but still working through that. But it's just to say that we know there needs to be safety improvements. And this is a big element, so it's something we're calling street design framework now, not the street typology. We changed that. And so what is a street design framework? So traditionally from 1950 to like 1995 in St. Louis, maybe like 2002, roadway design was very much based on volume. It was not, and so the car was like at the, I don't know if it was at the top of the pyramid or I think it was at the base of the pyramid. It was all about the car. You thought about volume first. But streets do more than just carry cars, right? They carry people, they're public spaces. Even if they are carrying cars, we want them to carry cars in a safe manner. And so rather than, just using, and a lot of so for 5 decades, most of the guidance around roadways came kind of from highway departments and was very auto-centric engineering. And over the last 2 or 3 decades, cities have really been developing sort of different design criteria that are appropriate to urban environments rather than suburban environments or rural roadway conditions. And so street design framework is a little bit like zoning for streets. So zoning says that like different design criteria are appropriate for different locations. And so the street design framework will say that a different design approach is appropriate for different types of street conditions based on the job that street has to do and what the adjacent development and land use is like. And while we do this informally now, this will provide, I think, much more affirmative guidance to us and to engineers working on projects, as well as to developers who might be rebuilding part of a block as part of a real estate development project. So we're working on that. One way to think about it is rather than the roadway out perspective where you just build lanes until you've accommodated all the cars, you think about it from the property line in. So what are the other things the street needs to do? Provide space for people, sidewalks, maybe provide space for other modes of transportation, provide the tree zone and landscaping, the amenity zone, and also yes, streets have to move cars too. I promise we're not going to completely forget about that. So at the end of the process, you get a map. And this is just sort of one example. This is not St. Louis. This is just a completed example from, can anybody guess the city? I'll talk, and then if anybody figures it out, you can shout it out. Just keep thinking. So you make a map and you say, these are the appropriate street elements on these different types of streets. And so then when you guys go and you say, hey, this is the block I live on, or, you know, this is the street I travel on a lot, and you go to your older person, you say, I don't think it's doing what it needs to do right now. Everybody is not starting from scratch. There's a common guide that everybody can point to, and we can say, well, this type of street, through this planning effort, we've decided that it should have these types of elements. So if we're gonna make an investment there, this kind of becomes the foundation for what that investment looks like. Now, we're not designing, we can't, and we're not designing every street in the city of St. Louis through this process. When you have a capital project, there will still be, you know, a design discussion and a, you know, what can we afford discussion. But this will provide, I think, a really helpful framework for guiding those discussions about what different streets should look like when we're making investments. And when we have, you know, not all the investments are driven by the city, some are driven by our partner agencies. This will really help us communicate to those agencies in a consistent way what the consensus of St. Louis residents is on how our streets should look. Any guesses on the city? It's hard. It's not Minneapolis. Doesn't matter. It's Kalamazoo, Michigan. And now the end of this presentation has kind of boring slides about stuff I've already talked about. It just goes through like how we plan to use the adopted transportation mobility plan. And it just sort of steps you through like, hey, people identify a problem on their street. And then how does the city and elected officials kind of collectively decide what to do about that? And so, I mean, actually go back. We can kind of identify, this is a real street in St. Louis. We can kind of identify this is probably not good, right? There's no sidewalk, it's kind of a weird hill condition. If you live near the street and you want to walk down it, you know, it's not a good condition to do that. But when we start having these conversations, if you go to the next slide, these are all the kind of things we hear about, right? Like people disagree on certain street design elements. And frequently, we hear sort of the most polarized opinions on those tend to be the ones that are expressed the loudest. And so having hopefully a little bit more of like a common vocabulary and design foundation can help us work through some of the discussions when there are trade-offs or conflicts around redesigning a street. We can just run through.
I have a question,
Yes.
something I did not observe there. I'm gonna use my street, for example, Shoto Street, we're in the intersection between, we meets with Boyd Street.
Mm-hmm.
I usually walk my dog in the morning, people tend to fly through that stop sign. It's a four-way stop sign.
Great example.
They don't stop, they just speed through it, and on weekends sometimes people do like donuts and just speed down that street because no one is there. I think I informed the cop last time about a time frame when people actually do that stuff. Could be like going to work early or whatever, and they believe there's no one there to enforce it. So stop sign doesn't do anything in St. Louis at Royalers, and red lights don't do anything. You can be waiting in line and someone from behind will just bypass everyone from the left and like the light is not there. And that's what can cause an accident. So if I'm looking at my street right now, we can put all the crosswalk sign and everything, that will not slow the car down that's moving at, I don't know, more than the speed limit for the street. Are there plans to implement stuff like, say, speed bumps to slow the vehicle down before they get to the cross sign, those stop signs, to actually slow them down so they don't cause any damage versus them flying at 67 miles per hour on a street that has 30 miles per hour or 15 miles per hour speed limit?
Yes. So we could probably like pause this presentation and just talk for an hour about Shoto because there's all kinds of potential things we can do and all kinds of, I mean, I can just think through like Shoto's probably very different, like 8 a.m. Monday morning compared to, 11 p.m. Saturday night. It's probably a lot of traffic on it Monday morning, right? People
Right.
going to the
I'm using that as an example
Right.
of what I observed. So I'm wondering, like, if you apply that to, I looked at the design and solution you guys have in place, and I noticed you guys have crosswalk. That's wonderful if people are following the law.
Yeah.
But when there's no one enforcing that, there's no police officer and stuff like that, there's not an impeding from speed. So I'm using that as something I observed, and I'm wondering, did you guys account for this in the street design? You guys have to make sure that at least it will slow the car down, so it doesn't hit a pedestrian that's trying to use a crosswalk and stuff like that. That's what.
Yeah, so road design is pretty easy when everybody follows the rules 100%.
Yes,
Makes it a lot easier, right?
Yeah.
We know from our lived experience that not everybody follows the rules. And even a relatively small number of people who are kind of egregiously violating the rules can create a big problem, even if it's just 1 or 2%. So I'll use a very current real example of something we're doing. So a 3-lane road configuration of 1 travel lane in each direction with a center turning lane is a very safe road configuration in most circumstances. And there's a lot of guidance that says take 4-lane roads and make them 3-lane roads because there's a lot fewer crashes and fewer serious crashes. We've done that in a lot of places and it does help. But some people will use that center turning lane, which you're just supposed to turn in and just speed down, right? And pass cars. And that's very dangerous behavior. So South Grand, kind of by St. Mary's, I don't know the exact cross streets, but we've got a 3-lane road there. We are adding a center concrete median in a lot of locations in that center lane, so people can't speed down it. There'll still be brakes in the median to make turns, at intersections. But so that's a kind of, we have to do something a little extra because of some drivers' behavior. So that's just one example of how sometimes just like the guidance out of the book doesn't kind of meet the real world conditions that we're experiencing. So yeah, those are things we hope to, I think, partially account for.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that it's not textbook application that you guys are just doing. Like, crosswalk is safe, use a crosswalk. So you guys are doing practical application to make sure the roads are safe for the citizens. That's what I'm trying to figure out. So
yeah, for sure. That's pretty much it. I will say that we appreciate the input we've had so far. We're kind of looking forward to plan development over the winter, vetting it partially with the community advisory committee, and then as well with the public when we have a draft plan. And I think we'll have lots more like pretty images to share as we get to spring next year. Are there any other questions? And then, yes.
Wonderful.
And thank you for being in the video also. You go online.
We're professionally. Yeah, I'm in the commercial. Now that we're doing this wonderful plan after 50, 70 years, what part of the plan, which you have not presented, is going to showcase how we're going to modify it in the future so that we don't have to wait another 50 or 70 years because it's not going to last forever.
I didn't hear part of that.
The plan will not last forever. Is there maintenance going to be about how are we going to update the plan 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years from now?
Yeah, I think a plan like this can have about a 20-year lifespan, and then it should be refreshed. Yeah.
I didn't see the slide on doing
if I'm around in 20, I mean, I think that we're doing a related update to the city's strategic land use plan, which is a whole other topic, which I won't go into, but it's an important thing. And there's a discussion about should we call it like St. Louis 2050? Because if you give it a name like that, it kind of implies like 20 years from now, people are going to need to start thinking about how they update this again. And our current strategic land use plan it's like 21 years old, and we are updating it. I'm going to be optimistic and say like, yes, I'm going to say we're going to use the plan. It's not going to be perfect. It won't do everything. It will provide guidance. And if it's used, it is much more likely to be updated because people will start to notice when it, starts to not reflect the current need or the current condition 2 decades from now. But that'll be a decision of future elected officials. And,
What do you mean by people will update it? I mean, is there a process? Where do you click to?
So all right, I'll go. So one way to answer that question is these plans cost money, right? They tend to be things that staff can't do all on their own. And so at some point in the future, there's got to be money allocated to refresh it, right? Another way to answer the question though is that part of this planning effort is building tools that we will be maintaining on kind of an annual basis. So like reporting structures, data collection structures, things we're publishing online about projects, tracking we're doing, this high injury network, it reflects current crash data that needs to be updated every like 2 years to really be an accurate reflection of what we should be doing next. And so some of this stuff, yes, there are kind of plan elements that can't wait 20 years. They really need to be more like every 2 to 3 years. There's got to be a maintenance plan. And East West Gateway, who did the heavy kind of data stuff on this, seems to be committed to doing that on the crash side, and that would be very helpful for us because then you have consistent regional data and it's like authoritative. And we can do it too, and we do, I think we will if they don't do it, but obviously we prefer.
So does that mean like you guys are gonna have some sort of online report like the DR? The efficiency report based on the plan you guys have in place. If it's implemented and it's not working, citizens can submit something against the plan so it can be used to modify it in a few years instead of waiting for 20 years?
Well, so the high entry network is already online, right? I don't know that, that's a complicated question. I don't know that like I as a staff person can ever say like, this isn't working, right? We can provide a robust document that we hope collectively is used by residents and groups like this and stakeholders and the city itself, right? And elected officials. And if the guidance is relatively clear, hopefully it gets used. I mean, I can say about the high entry network data, which is very clear. And if you look at like the East West Gateway website, it's like compelling information. It is already being used. So I hope that that is an example of how when we publish good information and like keep track of it, it does become incorporated into kind of more routine processes and funding decisions. Yes, sir.
Yes, I'd like to say that, unfortunately, St. Louis has been plagued with leaders like yourself that have these pet projects and they ignore the real problem. Yeah, I remember you were an alderman for 2 terms.
Yes,
and you spent a lot of time on getting bike racks in new construction. But what I'm saying is that safety begins at home safety. And the city is very good at transporting people away from the city. If you look at your map, the most unsafe areas are the areas with the highest vacancy. When you have population loss, it's unsafe. When you have people leaving, we have a loss of tax revenue, we have higher vacancies and higher crime, and it's unsafe. What we're trying to get the public people to listen to, because we know our neighborhood association has been compromised because we listened to former alderman last meeting pushing the same transportation pet projects. You want to fix transportation when you have people leaving in the thousands year after year. The concern should be to focus on keeping people here. And then we can do, not that this transportation is not important, but it's not going to be important when you won't have people to travel on these roads and you won't have money to fix these roads. We've been begging our aldermen since Rhodey gave us tax credits. We used their tax credits and we used the tax abatement to rebuild this community. But we have not had any kind of focus on the people that are here fixing their houses. And that's why people are leaving. And if you don't focus on that, not that we know you love this transportation and bikes and fixing these things, but without a population, these things will be irrelevant. Please focus on that. Thank you.
Yes. So those are all. Those are all relevant topics. I'm not gonna say anything you said is not important because those are certainly important things. I think where something like this can engage with those concerns is in do people want to be safe in their neighborhoods? They want to, like, when they're out going for a jog, riding their bike with their kids, whatever they're doing close to their home. Do they want that environment outside the house to be planned in a way that is accessible, that feels safe, that doesn't feel hostile because somebody is like speeding at 80 miles an hour down their street, right? Those are all factors, I think, in quality of life. I didn't really say quality of life in this presentation, but the overall sidewalk, tree canopy, street network absolutely is a huge contributing factor to
Why don't we
good
focusing
quality
on
of
that?
life.
Why don't we focus on that? Because you're spending a lot of money talking about bike racks and sidewalks, The people are leaving, even in nice neighborhoods like this, and people are losing a lot of money because there are houses like this neighborhood where they're selling they can't get $20,000 for their house. That's the most expensive thing you'll buy in your life, and you can't even sell it in the neighborhoods where they're unsafe. If you're already a shrinking city with limited revenue, you ought to be focusing your money. You already spent 2 terms on our dollar fixing, and you won't address housing. We can't get our aldermen to come out and look at our houses.
Dan, thank
Is
you.
that?
I said thank you.
Well, thank you, Dan. We appreciate the democratic process. Part of the problem is we've been compromised because instead of talking about what we really need to solve problems,
My next
we push
topic
these
was
pet
what topic
projects.
do you want to talk about
Thank
next?
you, Dan.
If you want to talk
We're gonna
about
get a new
housing,
election, we hope, and you won't be running. Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
We are about at time.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Sure, thank you. Maybe we can come back next year.
Thank you, Scott. That about does it. If there are topics you would like to have special speakers here to present on, please let me know. We can go and look for people who can speak of topics of interest. So Dan, if you have anybody in mind, we can bring them and invite them to an association meeting to help discuss topics of interest. As mentioned, electronics recycling event is coming up this Saturday. We have our neighborhood litter pickup 2 Saturdays from now, tree pruning 3 Sundays from now, and our next meeting will be after everyone votes on November 5th, Tuesday, November 5th. There's lots of amendments, propositions. And it's a presidential election, so please go vote. That's it. Thanks for everyone's time. We have about 5 minutes to mix and mingle, and then we have to head out. So thank you all.
Video.